child begged the guards, "Please help my mama." What happened moments later? Let me tell you what happened the day a terrified little girl ran to alien guards and changed the future of the galaxy. The mining outpost of Centauri. 7 clung to the scarred surface of a hostile moon like a metal parasite. Its hull plates were dented and discolored from years of micrometeorite strikes, its towers or processors forever belching vapor into the thin, toxic atmosphere. Inside, the outpost was a maze of welded corridors, flickering hazard lights, and rattling vents, kept alive by machinery that was never designed to run this long without a full rebuild. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. Officially, Centauri 7 was a Valyrian mining consortium asset, licensed under the Galactic Coalition's resource charter. Unofficially, everyone knew whose claws really gripped the place: Dravik security. The Dravik didn't run the drills or sign the payroll, but nothing and no one moved without their notice. Their presence hung over the outpost like low gravity, constant, invisible, and impossible to escape. The facility was not supposed to house families. It was built for crews who rotated out every few months, not for people desperate enough to call a home. But the economic implosion back on Earth had driven thousands of humans into whatever jobs they could find among the stars. Danger pay and remote assignments started to sound like blessings when your homeworld couldn't guarantee food. That's how Dr. Eliza Barrett ended up in Sector 4 with her 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Eliza was a geologist, brilliant enough that any sane world would have put her in university lab. Instead, the crash of 2187 had wiped out her grants, emptied her savings, and left her with a choice: starve on a dying Earth or sign a contract that shipped her to the far rim. She chose the rim. Sector 4 was where the lowest-ranked workers slept, humans crammed into thin-walled cells, their doors sticking, their recyclers groaning, their neighbors too tired to talk above a mutter. The sectors were ranked, and nobody bothered to hide what that meant. Higher numbers meant worse conditions, lower pay, less respect. Sector 4 might as well have had a sign: disposable. The species in charge never let them forget it. The Valyrians, furred and compact, ran the company side. The Dravik ran the enforcement. The Dravik were the ones people whispered about in the corridors: towering, reptilian beings over 2 meters tall, their scales polished to a faint metallic sheen. Dark cobalt, gunmetal, storm gray. Bony ridges arched from their brows back over their skulls and down their spines like ceremonial armor. Their compound eyes, set in faceted rings of color, could track 3 different movements at once. It was said they could follow a tossed coin, a shifting shadow, and the pulsing rhythm of a heartbeat all at the same time. They were famous for 2 things: absolute discipline and absolute loyalty to protocol. On Centauri 7, that meant they pretended not to see a lot of things as long as production numbers stayed high and nobody threatened the outpost stability. Humans learned quickly that you did not ask Dravik for help with small problems. Small problems did not fit into the neat boxes of their regulations. Lily Barrett knew that. Her mother had drilled it into her. If you see Dravik guards, walk straight, chin down, eyes front. They're not our friends, but they're not our enemies if we don't make them notice us. On the day everything changed, Lily broke that rule. Alarms weren't blaring. There was no emergency broadcast signaling breach or radiation leak. Just the ordinary thunder of machinery chewing into the moon's crust, the hum of life support, the muffled stomp of boots on metal. Shift change. Tired workers in gray jumpsuits streamed past the alien checkpoint at the junction between Sector 4 and the central spine, flashing identity chips and slumping toward their bunks. At the security post, 3 Dravik guards stood like statues in gunmetal armor plates, pulse batons clipped to their sides, eyes watching everything and nothing at once. They were bored. Their posture was perfect. Then they heard it, the frantic patter of smaller footsteps hammering down the corridor. Lily ran as if the deck might drop out from under her at any moment. She was streaked with grime from Sector 4's ventilation ducts, her dark hair tangled, her chest heaving, tears blurring her vision. She almost slipped as she came around the last corner, caught herself on a bulkhead, and launched herself toward the checkpoint. Instinct made the Dravik shift. Massive hands moved toward their weapons by reflex. Protocol said, "Unidentified running body, increase readiness status." The leader, Commander Krell, tilted his head slightly, faceted eyes narrowing as the human child skidded to a halt right in front of his armored boots. "They're hurting my mama," Lily gasped, words tumbling over each other. "Please, please, you have to come. They're beating her, the foreman and his men. They're going to kill her." Human voices always sounded thin through the recycled air, but raw terror did something to them. It made them jagged. It made them cut. The translator note at Krell's throat processed the child's words a fraction of a second after he understood them from context, outputting a flat, synthesized version in his own language. Beside him, Officer Vex and Officer Tarn exchanged a quick glance, one of those tiny micro-gestures that said, "This is not what training covered." Dravik doctrine was clear. Domestic disputes among subordinate species were not their concern unless they spilled into sabotage, riot, or clear threat to the outpost operations. Humans were officially emotionally volatile and operationally expendable. Intervening without cause could be labeled overreach. "Human juvenile," Krell said, his voice emerging as a rough, resonant growl through the translator. "Return to your assigned sector. Internal human disputes are beyond our jurisdiction." Lily's face crumpled, but she didn't run. Instead, she stepped forward and grabbed for the edge of his armor plating with both hands, fingers slipping on the smooth composite. "They said she stole something from a mine," she choked. "They said she took company secrets. She didn't. She just found something. She hid it. She told me if anything happened, I had to take it to the Coalition embassy. Please, they're going to make her tell them where it is. They're going to." Her voice broke completely. The words Coalition embassy landed in Krell's mind like a coded alert. Behind him, Vex straightened perceptibly. Tarn's eyes flickered as his secondary irises shifted focus, instinctively scanning surrounding hallways for witnesses. Company secrets were in their jurisdiction. Coalition involvement was very definitely in their jurisdiction. "What kind of secrets?" Vex cut in, his tone sharper than his commander's. "I don't know." Lily scrubbed at her cheeks with the back of one hand, still clutching Krell's armor with the other. "Mama's a geologist. She was scared. She hid something this morning in our room and said if she didn't come back, I had to get it and find the Coalition people somehow. I don't know how, but..." Her breath hitched. "I can show you where she hid it. But if you don't come now, they'll hurt her more." Krell's mind slid through regulations at high speed. As a Dravik, he had been drilled since hatchling days to think in chains of protocol. A leads to B, B to C. The mention of Coalition authority, combined with alleged unauthorized data extraction, combined with physical coercion off the official grid, that created a pattern he could not ignore. If a human worker had stumbled onto something that demanded Coalition review, and the company chose to bury it with violence, that would not simply be a disciplinary issue. It could explode into charter violations, sanctions, even military intervention. Any security commander who failed to respond would share the blame. "Where is your maternal unit being held?" he asked. "In the old maintenance level," Lily answered at once. "Sub-C, the big storage room with the broken door." "Please." Krell tapped his comm plate. "Squad 3, converge on maintenance sublevel C. Possible unauthorized interrogation and corporate espionage activity. Full security loadout." Then he looked down at the human child, still clinging to his armor. Protocol said, "Keep witnesses away from hot zones." Protocol also said, "Use best available navigation data in unsecured areas." The maintenance sublevels were a mess of half-updated schematics and forgotten shafts. A child who'd grown up sneaking through Sector 4's vents probably knew more about them than his entire squad. "You will follow behind us at a distance of 3 meters, Krell declared. "You will obey all instructions given by Dravik security personnel. Officer Vex, if hostilities escalate, you will remove the juvenile from the area first. Is this understood?" "Understood, Commander," Vex replied, a crisp salute cutting through the heavy air. Krell stepped out from behind the checkpoint, his massive tail sweeping once to clear space. The crowd of workers parted without needing to be told. Most of them avoided looking directly at the scene. Human trouble was dangerous to witness. Lily ran to keep up as the two Dravik strode toward the nearest maintenance lift. Her legs were short, her lungs burned, but something fierce and stubborn burned hotter in her chest. She'd done the unthinkable. She'd begged the scary alien guards for help. Now she would not let herself fall behind. The lift shuddered as it carried them downward, the floor vibrating with the pulse of heavy machinery in the levels below. The temperature rose with every stop they passed, the air filling with the smell of hot metal, lubricants, and long-trapped dust. Sublevel C had been half abandoned years ago, converted into a dumping ground for outdated equipment and quiet conversations that didn't belong on official logs. When the doors opened, the lighting was worse, strips half dead, some flickering, some gone entirely. Rust stains leaked from pipe joints. A thin haze of vapor hung in the air like old breath. "This way," Lily whispered, voice automatically dropping in the oppressive silence. She darted into a narrow service corridor that hardly came up to Krell's chest. He activated his shoulder lamp, the beam cutting through the gloom. Dravik night vision was excellent, but down here, even his compound eyes appreciated the extra illumination. Footfalls that felt heavy and echoing in Sector 4 were strangely muffled here, as if the outpost itself didn't want to draw attention to what happened in these forgotten spaces. They made several turns, ducking under low conduits, squeezing between abandoned crates. Twice, Lily pointed toward shortcuts, old access shafts that had never been updated on official maps. Both times, Krell weighed the risk and accepted her guidance. Efficiency mattered. At the mouth of a side passage, Lily suddenly flattened herself against the wall, one hand flying up in a warning gesture. "They're just around that bend," she breathed. "The big room with the broken door panel." "I can't hear." Krell raised one clawed hand in the Dravik signal for hold position. "Officer Vex, secure the juvenile," he ordered quietly. Vex moved to stand beside Lily, one armored arm slightly angled in front of her without actually touching her. Dravik didn't do comfort. They did coverage. Krell stepped forward alone, his bulk surprisingly silent on the metal grating as he approached the corner. He let his senses stretch out ahead of him. Faint voices, buzzing power relays, the thud of flesh striking flesh, and a muffled cry choked down before it became scream. "Tell us where you hit it, human," a voice snarled. The accent and timbre identified the speaker even before Krell peeked around the edge of the doorway. Foreman Drex, Valyrian, mid-tier management, reputation file flag for disciplinary enthusiasm. Eliza Barrett's reply floated back, strained but steady. "I told you, I didn't steal anything. I cataloged my findings like every other survey. If your system glitched, that's not my problem." Another impact. Another stifled cry. "We tracked an unauthorized data copy from your terminal," Drex growled. "You signed exclusivity. Everything you discover belongs to the consortium. You don't get to decide what leaves this station." Krell saw enough. He stepped fully into the storage bay, pulse weapon already clearing its holster. The room was roughly circular, stacked high with obsolete machinery and crates marked with flaking hazard symbols. In the center, a chair had been dragged into the open. Eliza Barrett was strapped to it with rough polymer bindings, face swollen on one side, hair sticking to dried blood at the edge of her lip. Two muscle-bound security contractors, private Valyrian muscle, not Dravik, stood on either side of her. Foreman Drex loomed in front, thick rust-colored fur bristling. "Foreman Drex," Krell said, his voice amplified just enough to cut across the space. "State the authorization code for this interrogation." All three Valyrians jumped. Drex spun around, eyes widening when he saw who filled the doorway. "Commander Krell," he said after a heartbeat, scrambling to pull authority over his surprise. "This is an internal company matter. A simple contract violation. We have it under control." "That is not what I asked." Krell's weapon remained steady, not directly aimed at anyone, but very clearly ready. Physical coercion of a contracted worker requires documented security authorization. Provide the code or end this session immediately. One of the contractors muttered, too low for a human ear, but well within Dravik range. Since when do lizards care how we handle humans? Eliza lifted her head gingerly. Her eyes focused on Krell's scaled face, flicked to the weapon, then searched the doorway behind him. Lily, she croaked, panic shoving through the pain. Where's my daughter? What have you done with her? Your offspring is secure, Krell said. She made a report at the security checkpoint. Drex's fur rose higher. She what? This human attempted to transmit proprietary data off station. Drex snapped. That's a direct breach of contract. Under Section 12, Krell finished for him, which grants disciplinary authority within legal parameters. Unauthorized physical interrogation in an unregistered location is not within those parameters. Boots pounded in the corridor behind him. Squad 3 on site, Commander, came a voice over his comm. Enter and hold positions, Krell ordered. For more Dravik flowed into the room, their presence turning the balance of power with the inevitability of gravity. The contractors stiffened. Drex's bravado dimmed, replaced by calculation. Krell holstered his weapon with deliberate calm and stepped toward the chair. Dr. Eliza Barrett, you are being transferred to official security custody pending investigation of alleged data theft. You will receive medical treatment. You will give a full statement afterward. Eliza flinched as he cut her bindings, not from pain this time, but from shock. Am I under arrest? She rasped. You are under protective detainment, Krell said. Status will be determined following review of evidence. Drex took a step forward, fists clenched. You're overstepping, Commander. The human belongs to the consortium under her contract. So does whatever she stole. Evidence of potential corporate espionage falls under Dravik Security's charter. Krell replied evenly. You and your contractors will report to Central Command for debriefing regarding your methods. Drex's eyes narrowed. I'll be taking this straight to Director Volmar. He won't tolerate this interference. That is within your rights, Krell said. My actions will be documented for his review. For a long moment, the two males faced each other, Valyrian fur bristling, Dravik scales catching the imperfect light. The contractors shifted uncomfortably, weighing their loyalty against the armed reptiles standing between them and the door. Self-preservation 1. Drex jerked his head toward the exit. We're leaving, he snarled to his men. As he passed Krell, he leaned in just close enough for a low, bitter hiss. What did the human offer you, Commander? Credits? Favors? Humans never get this kind of protection for free. Krell didn't dignify that with a reply. He focused instead on Eliza, who was trying and failing to stand on her own. I can walk, she muttered through clenched teeth. Medical bay. Krell signaled to 2 of his squad. Standard escort protocol. Minimal restraints. She is injured, not violent. They moved to support her, careful, efficient, impersonal. Dravik didn't do kindness. They did procedure. As they helped her toward the door, a small form darted around Officer Vex's legs and shot past the bulk of Squad 3 like a comet. Mama! Lily's voice cracked on the word. Eliza turned toward the sound, nearly losing her balance. Then Lily was there, throwing herself into her mother's arms with enough force to draw a sharp gasp from Eliza's bruised ribs. I told you to hide, Eliza whispered, wrapping her arms around her daughter despite the pain. You were supposed to stay safe. I couldn't, Lily sobbed into her shoulder. I went to the guards instead. I made them come. Krell watched them, the tight knot of human limbs and tears and whispered apologies, with the same focused attachment he used to study combat footage. Something in the sight snagged, though, like a hook in cloth. Dravik offspring did not cling to their genetic parents like that. They were raised in communal creches, trained by whichever adults were assigned rotation duty. Bonds were to the unit, not the individual. Whatever this human mother-child connection was, it was powerful enough to drag a child straight toward beings she'd been taught to fear. Dr. Barrett, he said, cutting gently through the reunion, you will receive medical treatment and then provide a statement regarding the alleged data breach. Your offspring will remain under Dravic protection in your quarters for the duration of the investigation. Eliza's posture stiffened. I want your word, she said, looking up at him with eyes still bright with pain and fury. Whatever happens to me, Lily is not to be harmed. No experiments. No leverage. Nothing. I've seen what some companies do with kids. Technically, giving personal assurances outside written contract language sat in a gray area for Dravic officers. Krell felt the weight of that as keenly as he felt the weight of his armor. The juvenile will not be harmed while under Dravic supervision, he said at last, each word precise. Something in his tone made Eliza's shoulders loosen by a fraction. Then I'll cooperate, she said. But you're going to want to see what's on the data crystal before your Valyrian friends bury it. Krell filed that away. Officer Vex, he ordered, escort the juvenile and myself to Sector 4. We will secure any concealed evidence in their quarters. Squad 3, continue to medical with Dr. Barrett. As they wound back through the maintenance maze and into the lift, Lily kept sneaking looks up at Krell, like she was trying to decide if he was still terrifying now that he'd helped her. You're not as scary up close, she blurted finally as they entered the cramped habitat block of Sector 4. The other kids say Dravic guards never care if humans get hurt. They say you only care about rules. Rules maintain order, Krell replied automatically as they reached the door to the barrack quarters. Order maintains survival. It was the sort of answer his instructors would have approved. He had no ready answer for the way Lily frowned, as if that sounded incomplete. Inside the tiny room, just one bunk that folded into the wall, a narrow wash stall, a single storage trunk, Krell had to duck his head to enter. His presence made the space feel like a closet. Mama hid it there, Lily said, pointing to a scuffed ventilation panel near the floor. She thought I didn't see, but I did. Officer Vex knelt, claws deftly releasing the screws without stripping them. Behind the grate, his hand found a small, hard object. He withdrew it carefully, a standard mining-grade data crystal, its surface gleaming faintly with embedded circuitry. Is this the only concealed item? Krell asked. Lily nodded. She was shaking when she hid it. She said she'd found something that wasn't supposed to be there and that bad people would do anything to keep it secret. Krell took the crystal from Vex and slipped it into a secure slot on his harness. Whatever was on this sliver of data was about to drag the Dravic commander into a collision between contract and conscience. His comm pinged sharply. Commander Krell, came the clipped voice of the outpost's administrative aide. Director Volmar requests your immediate presence regarding a security overreach in Maintenance Sublevel C. It didn't take a tactical genius to know exactly who had complained. Notify the director I am currently processing key evidence in a potential coalition matter, Krell said. I will report to his office once security procedures are complete. There was a pause long enough to be insulting. I will relay your message, the aide said at last. Krell ended the call and looked down at Lily. She suddenly seemed smaller again in the dim light of the room, her earlier fierceness drained, fingers twisting in the hem of her grimy shirt. Do not leave this habitat, he instructed. Officer Vex will remain here. No one will enter without my authorization. Lily swallowed hard. Are you still helping my mom? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. I will follow applicable protocols, Krell said. It was the most honest answer he had. He left her there, under the watch of a Dravic officer and a stuffed toy animal that had seen better days, and headed toward the administrative level with a data crystal in his harness and a human child's desperate trust weighing more heavily than his armor. And that was how it began, with a little girl who ran to the very guards who should have turned her away, and a Dravic commander whose interpretation of duty was about to push against every line in the book. The lift to the administrative deck hummed smoother than any other on the station. It was the kind of little luxury no one in Sector 4 ever saw unless they were in trouble. Commander Krell rode it in silence, hands folded behind his back, armor plates humming faintly as they adjusted to the temperature change. The higher you went on Centauri 7, the cleaner everything got, brighter lights, polished floors, fewer dents. It didn't impress him. Clean floors didn't change accident statistics. When the doors slid open, He stepped into a corridor lined with textured wall panels and recessed lights that pretended the outpost wasn't bolted to a hostile rock. A wide viewport at the end showed the harsh, gray curve of the moon and the skeletal silhouettes of mining towers. Director Volmar's office sat right beside that view, because of course it did. The Valyrian admin staff outside stiffened when Krell approached. They tried not to stare, tried and failed. Dravik officers didn't usually come up here without an invitation and a lot more ceremony. Director Volmar is waiting, the aide said, smoothing his silver-streaked fur with a nervous gesture. Along with others, Krell keyed the door. It slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Director Volmar stood near the window with his paws clasped behind his back, silver-threaded fur immaculate, eyes fixed on the mining operations below. His tail flicked once when he heard the door. To Volmar's left lounged Foreman Drex, fur still puffed with anger, eyes hot. On the other side of the room stood a third figure, tall, thin, with skin like polished stone and eyes like dark pools. No pupils, no reflections. Siren species. Legal division, if the insignia on his collar was accurate. Commander Krell, Volmar said without turning around. You made quite a statement in Maintenance Sublevel C. Krell stood at attention, posture textbook perfect. I enforce security regulations regarding unauthorized physical interrogation, Director. A medical examination of Dr. Barrett will confirm excessive force was used. Volmar finally turned, his expression somewhere between polite and predatory. Oh, spare me the manual, he said. We all know those pages exist. The question is why you chose to dust them off today, when similar excesses have been quietly tolerated for years. That was true, and everyone in the room knew it. Krell's compound eyes didn't blink. The situation includes potential transmission of restricted data, he replied. The human geologist allegedly attempted contact outside consortium channels. That escalates the matter from simple discipline to a security concern. The siren stepped forward. His voice was smooth and almost musical, each word carefully shaped. Thalen Moore, Corporate Counsel, he said. You have custody of this supposedly stolen data crystal, Commander. Krell's hand drifted, almost imperceptibly, toward the secure slot on his harness where the crystal rested. I do. Excellent. Moore extended long, delicate fingers. Then we can resolve this quickly. Turn over the device to the consortium. The contents are, by definition, company property, gathered under an exclusivity contract. With respect, Krell replied, evidence in an active security investigation must be evaluated by security personnel before release. Our charter is clear. If analysis shows the data poses no wider risk, it will be returned to consortium control. Drex's ears snapped flat. This is absurd, he growled. The human stole data. That's it. You saw the bruise and decided to play hero. Krell didn't bother looking at him. The human was injured during an unauthorized interrogation in an unregistered space, he said. Your methods are now as much under review as her actions. Director Volmar's fur bristled, but his voice stayed smooth. Commander, perhaps you forget your place. Dravik forces are here under contract. You are not an independent authority. You enforce our interests. We enforce coalition security statutes, Krell corrected, through a contract that specifies operational autonomy in matters impacting station safety and compliance. If the data proves benign, it returns to you. If it does not, Moore interrupted softly, then you will have involved the coalition in an internal company matter that could have been handled quietly. That sort of overreach tends to make contracts shorter. Krell considered the lawyer for a long moment. Siren faces didn't show much emotion. Their features were too still, too symmetrical. But his tone betrayed something. Certainty that the power balance would ultimately favor the consortium. Krell did not feel certainty. He felt the familiar, solid scaffolding of rules, aligning in his mind like a tactical map. Given your concern for procedural correctness, he said, we can establish a joint analysis. Security and company technicians will review the crystal together. The data will remain in security facilities, under my supervision, until its nature is confirmed. Volmar's expression tightened. Drex's claws flexed. Moore glanced between them, calculating. A compromise, the siren said slowly. We are, of course, committed to transparency with our security partners. He turned to Volmar. Director? Volmar clearly hated it, but refusing outright would create a record he couldn't control. His tail flicked once. Fine, he said at last. Joint analysis. But I expect this wrapped up quickly, Commander. The human and her child have already disrupted operations more than they're worth. Once this is settled, they're off this outpost. On what grounds? Krell asked, though the probable answer was obvious. Contract termination, Volmar replied. Unauthorized communications. Loss of trust. We are not obligated to keep volatile humans on a high-risk installation. Krell couldn't argue the letter of that, but he didn't have to agree with its spirit. Understood, he said. I'll begin analysis immediately. He turned to leave. Commander, Volmar added, his voice suddenly silky. While you're reviewing the data, remember this. We've all made accommodations on this outpost. Look the other way when it suited everyone. If you insist on changing the rules in the middle of the game, don't be surprised when someone decides you're the piece to remove from the board. It was, by any reasonable standard, a threat. Krell logged it verbatim in his internal report as he walked out. The interrogation suite in Dravik Security was the opposite of Volmar's office. No window, no decor, no soft surfaces. Just a table, 2 chairs, a wall screen, and a recording node pulsing quietly in the corner. Eliza Barrett sat at the table, medical patch on her cheek, eyes clear despite the residual bruising. She flinched as the door opened, then relaxed by degrees when she saw who entered. Where's Lily? Was her first question. In your assigned habitat, under Officer Vexguard, Krell said. She is uninjured. Some of the tension in Eliza's shoulders went out. Thank you, she said. That's more than I expected from Dravik Security. Krell removed the data crystal from his harness and placed it on the table between them. Explain what this contains, he said, and why you attempted unauthorized transmission. Eliza stared at the crystal for a moment, as if deciding how much to trust him. Then she looked up, searching his unreadable compound eyes for something she couldn't name. If I tell you the truth, she said, I need more than under Dravik's supervision. I need to know my daughter gets off this rock alive. No, lost in transit. No, admin error. A ticket to Europa Station. I have a sister there. She could take Lily in. Krell considered. What she was asking skirted the edge of his authority. Extraction of witnesses fell under security in extreme cases, but only if the threat level justified it. You believe your discovery places your life at risk, he said. I know it does, she replied. If all I'd done was duplicate routine survey data, Drex would have dragged me to a proper discipline office, filed the paperwork, and enjoyed it. Instead, he hauled me to a dark room with 2 off-the-books thugs. That doesn't happen over a mislabeled rock sample. Her voice shook, but not from fear now, from controlled anger. Motive, Krell prompted. Eliza tapped the crystal with one finger. It started in Sector 12, she said. We were mapping fracture lines near a new quartzite vein. The readings were strange, hollow, like a void behind the deposit. Protocol says we scan any cavity before we drill. So I ran a standard full-spectrum sweep. She leaned forward, lowering her voice though the room was secure. The scan came back with artificial isotope signatures. Not natural, not from our equipment. Deliberate. Oh, Krell felt something in his chest tighten. Precursor tech? He asked. Worse, she said. I cross-referenced the isotope ratios against Coalition archives. They matched records from the Kitharin detonation zone. Even Dravik used that name carefully. Centuries ago, an entire system had vanished in an antimatter containment failure so catastrophic it tore apart not just the inhabited planet, but several of its neighboring bodies. The Kitharin species died in a single week of fire. The Coalition had emerged from the ashes with one unbreakable rule. Certain technologies were never to be touched again. If the Consortium is secretly digging up Kitharin-era hardware, Eliza continued, and tried to reverse engineer it under a mining license, they're not just breaking corporate ethics. They're breaking galactic law. You confirm the match personally? Krell asked. I'm not a physicist, But I'm not an idiot either, she said. I pulled archive data, compared patterns, ran margin of error models. That's what's on the crystal. Raw scan, my analysis, and a flag transmission packet addressed to the Coalition Embassy on Kestris. I never got to send it. Their monitors picked up the assembled transmission request before I hit confirm. That's when everything went wrong. Krell's claws clicked once against the table. You understand what you're alleging? He said. This would trigger a full Security Council investigation. If your analysis is flawed, the penalties are severe. Eliza's gaze didn't waver. Commander, I've spent my whole adult life reading rock. I know when I'm looking at something that shouldn't exist. And I know the look of people who are terrified you'll tell someone about it. Drex and Volmar aren't just worried about losing a contract. They're scared of someone above them. The data crystal sat between them, small and harmless looking. Remain here, Krell said finally. Do not speak to anyone else. I will verify your claims. He took the crystal and stepped out, sealing the door behind him with a code that would log any unauthorized entry attempt. In his private office, he slid the crystal into an encrypted reader. Lines of data poured across his display, scanned grids, energy spectra, chemical analyses. He was not a geologist, but Coalition certification required every security commander to understand the basics of regulated tech signatures. The cavity in Sector 12 resolved on his screen, an irregular cube hollowed out behind a thick curtain of quartzite. Embedded in the rock were shapes that were not rock at all. Twisted metallic ribs, half-melted conduits, warped plates whose edges still held a faint, terrible symmetry. Then the isotopic spread appeared, peaks and valleys like a jagged heartbeat. He recognized the pattern from training modules. Not exact, but close enough that the system flagged it with 3 separate warnings. He pulled up the Kithern reference file. The match percentage climbed as he overlaid Eliza's analysis and the archival data. 91%, 94, 96. It wasn't conclusive proof that the wreckage belonged to the Kyther themselves. It didn't have to be. Coalition statutes were clear. Any tech field involving those isotopes in that configuration triggered Security Protocol 7 Alpha. Mandatory reporting. Mandatory containment. No corporate override. Krell sat very still. Dravik were taught to think of themselves as the spine of order in a chaotic galaxy. Their contracts gave them purpose, but their allegiance was always supposed to be to something above money, to rules that kept civilizations from burning themselves out. He could hear his training officers' voices in his memory. When protocols conflict, highest-level safety statutes supersede all local agreements. Always. His comm unit buzzed. Commander, Officer Vex's voice crackled through, slightly distorted by distance. We have a situation at the Barrack quarters. Director Volmar has dispatched company security to assume custody of the human juvenile. He claims authority under parental contract terms. Krell didn't hesitate. Maintain position, he said. Do not yield. I am en route. He copied the relevant data from the crystal to a personal encrypted module, then removed the crystal itself and slipped both devices into separate secure slots. Redundancy. He left his office at a pace that, for a Dravik, was almost a run. By the time he reached Sector 4, the hallway outside the Barrack habitat was a pressure cooker. 2 Valyrian security contractors in company colors stood squared off against Officer Vex, whose armor blocked the doorway like a wall. Behind Vex's shoulder, Krell glimpsed a small, pale face peering around the edge of the doorframe. You have orders from the director, one contractor was saying, voice raised. The child is company property as long as the mother's contract is active. We're relocating her to secure quarters for evaluation. And I have orders from Commander Krell, Vex replied, his tone flat, but his stance radiating readiness. No entry. No exceptions. We're not asking the lizard, the other contractor snapped. Step aside. Krell's voice cut through the argument like a blade. Explain this attempt to remove a protected witness. The contractors turned. Their ears flattened reflexively when they saw who had arrived. Commander, the first one said, trying to reclaim authority. Director Volmar has authorized us to take custody of the human girl. Standard procedure in contract violations. Miners are reassigned or repatriated as the consortium sees fit. The juvenile is a material witness in an ongoing security investigation, Krell said. Under Dravik charter terms, she remains under my protection until the case concludes. Your orders conflict with higher priority protocols. With respect, the contractor said carefully, your charter exists because of our contract. Director Volmar does not outrank coalition law, Krell finished, and he does not outrank security protocol 7 Alpha. The contractor blinked. 7 Alpha? That's tech containment. Correct, Krell said. Evidence suggests potential Kithrin-linked technology in this system. Until that is disproven, all associated individuals and data fall under coalition security jurisdiction. He hadn't told Volmar that yet. Saying it now, aloud, was like locking a cage door behind himself. It would be in the record, in every Dravik and coalition log pinging through the relay network. The contractors looked at each other. They knew the word Kithrin too. Everyone did. You're making a mistake, one muttered finally. When the consortium lawyers are done with you. That is my concern, not yours, Krell said. Withdraw. Now. They backed down. Not gracefully, not quietly, but they backed down, muttering threats about complaints and consequences as they retreated down the corridor. When they were gone, Vex exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Commander, he said quietly, you've escalated this to 7 Alpha? Krell nodded. The evidence leaves no other option. We're beyond contract politics. Vex's eyes gleamed faintly. Understood, he said. Orders. Krell looked past him to where Lily had retreated just inside the doorway, clutching her stuffed toy so tightly it seemed strained. You will prepare an emergency transport, Krell said. Small shuttle. Minimal crew. Reason for launch. Transfer to planetary security facility. Within the hour, we depart for outpost Gamma 3. Vex's brows rose. Sir, that's crossing several lines at once. The Kithrin statutes supersede local agreements, Krell reminded him. We are obligated to ensure the data and primary witnesses reach coalition custody. Volmar is already attempting to interfere with that obligation. Delay favors him. Vex's hesitation lasted only a moment. Then his posture shifted from uncertainty to acceptance. Already the shuttle, he said, and initiate a secure transmission to coalition security, flagged 7 Alpha. They should have our packet before we jump. Krell nodded once. Good. I will return Dr. Barrett to her daughter and brief them. As Vex moved off, Krell stepped into the Barrett quarters again. The room felt even smaller now, stuffed with importance it was never meant to hold. Lily stood in the middle of the floor, eyes huge, stuffed animal dangling from one hand. Those were the bad men, she asked. They have withdrawn, Krell said. However, circumstances have changed. You and your maternal unit must leave this outpost today. Lily's face lit up with something startlingly pure. Hope. We're going to Anamias, she said. On Europa Station? Mama told me if we ever got off this place, that's where we'd go. That is the intended destination, Krell replied. After a transfer at a coalition outpost. I knew you were good, Lily declared with absolute certainty. The other kids said Dravik only care about rules. But your eyes weren't sharp like the others. She squinted up at him. You listen when people are scared. Dravik eyes did not change shape. They did not soften or harden. They did not do anything humans thought they saw. And yet, somehow, this small human had read something in him no performance review had ever managed to name. Gather your essential possessions, Krell said, deflecting. You may bring one container. We leave in 42 minutes. As Lily hurried to stuff a few clothes and a battered hollow picture into a small bag, Krell's comm pinged again. Commander, the admin aide's voice came through, flustered and sharp. Director Volmar demands your presence in the analysis lab. The joint review is scheduled to begin now. Inform the director I am engaged in a priority 7 Alpha evacuation of high-value witnesses, Krell said. The analysis will proceed when secure transfer is ensured. There was a shocked pause. Commander, he insisted. Log my response, Krell said. Krell out. He closed the channel before anyone could argue. Outside, The outpost went on pretending nothing unusual was happening, or being processed, shifts rotating, credits being earned. But inside Dravik security channels, red flags were already flashing, messages racing toward distant coalition relays. Krell knew what this meant for him personally. At minimum, he'd face a formal inquiry. At worst, he'd be labeled insubordinate, contract violating, difficult. Dravik High Command did not enjoy dealing with difficult. But there was a scared little human girl stuffing a lifetime into one bag because she trusted him. And there was a crystal in his harness that hummed like a live grenade waiting for someone to lie about it. He had a choice: pretend this was just another messy mining dispute, or act like the protocols he'd sworn to meant something when they were hardest to follow. He had already made his decision. "Lily," he said, as she zipped up her bag and hugged her stuffed animal with her free arm. "Yes," she answered, breathless. "Stay close to Officer Vex," Krell told her. "No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, do not let go of him until you are on the shuttle." She nodded solemnly. "Will you be there too?" "I will ensure your departure," he said. "Then I will handle those who disagree." From the admin deck to the shuttle bay, from Volmar's polished window to the forgotten cavity in Sector 12, invisible lines were being drawn. The consortium didn't know it yet, but the moment they sent a child running to Dravik security for help and tried to drag her away again, they stopped being the only ones making the rules. Humans had a saying: when you corner a predator, you'd better be sure you're the hungrier one. As far as the galaxy was concerned, the Dravik weren't supposed to care. But this time one of them did. And Centauri 7 was about to find out what happened when a species built on obedience decided that the highest rules mattered more than the people who signed the paychecks. The hum of the ventilation grid outside the barrack quarters grew louder as workers began shifting towards supper rotation, footsteps echoing through the narrow corridors. None of them looked toward the door where Officer Vex stood guard, nor did they linger long enough to wonder why Dravik security was suddenly taking such an interest in a human family. Sector 4 knew better than to ask questions with sharp edges. Questions like that could get someone reassigned to the cold storage levels. Inside the small room, Lily Barrett hugged her stuffed animal close, her bag of belongings already zipped tight. She looked like she was trying very hard not to shake. Children weren't built to hold that much fear without trembling, but she was doing her best. Krell observed this quietly, his compound eyes shifting focus between the child, the hallway, and the watch on his wrist. 42 minutes. Now, 37. Speed mattered. Precision mattered more. "Eliza Barrett is en route from medical," Krell said, checking his comm for confirmation. "She will meet us directly at the shuttle bay. Officer Vex is securing the route." Lily looked up at him, her chin lifting with a courage that looked too big for some of her size. "Are you coming with us the whole way?" she asked. "No," Krell answered. "I will escort you as far as the outpost boundary. After that, Officer Vex will ensure safe travel." Lily's expression flickered. "But you have to come too. The bad men will get you." "I'm not your concern," Krell began, but she shook her head stubbornly. "You helped us. You didn't have to, so now you're part of it. That means you're family too." Krell actually paused. Dravik didn't have a word for family the way humans used it. Their closest equivalent translated loosely to shared purpose group, a concept built around duty, not affection. But humans used the word differently. They meant bonds that lasted, responsibilities unwritten, loyalty unearned, but freely given. Humans were strange. And yet this strange child had crossed the entire station to beg help from someone she was supposed to fear. "You should not assign obligations based on emotional impulse," Krell said. Lily frowned. "But that's what people do when they care." Care. Another human-specific term with no direct Dravik parallel. Before Krell could respond, his comm vibrated urgently. "Commander," Vex whispered through the encrypted channel, "Director Volmar has issued a Level 2 station lockdown. No movement between sectors without authorization codes. He's attempting to trap us." Krell felt something tighten beneath his ribs. "Lockdown requires dual authority," Krell said. "He cannot override Dravik security codes." "He can't," Vex agreed. but he's trying to jam our internal channels with false routing pings. The company wants us confused. They're preparing to intercept. Maintain position, Krell ordered. Initiate shuttle prep. I will bring the juvenile to you shortly. He turned to Lily, who was watching him with wide eyes. It is time, Krell said. Stay behind me. Keep your bag secured. Do not let go of Officer Vex when we reach him. Lily nodded once, tight and quick. Krell stepped outside, scanning the corridor. No contractors in sight. The lighting flickered slightly, an early sign of the lockdown engaging. Sector 4's old circuits always shuddered before a full override. He lifted a hand. Lily, with me. She followed close, clutching her bag and stuffed animal, her steps light but steady. Krell adjusted his stride to match hers, slowing from his usual long, confident pace to something closer to a human walk. It still took effort not to outdistance her. As they approached the junction leading to the central spine, a chime sounded through the walls. 2 sharp notes, one low, one high. Not an alarm, a warning. Lockdown sequence initiated, the automated voice droned. Movement between sectors limited. Await instructions from administrative oversight. It's starting, Lily whispered. Krell's comm buzzed again. Commander, Vex said, security contractors are converging on Deck 3. They're trying to box us away from the shuttle. Krell's stride didn't break. Use path C-17 through the maintenance conduits, Krell said. That bypasses 2 of the central checkpoints. Already en route, Vex confirmed. I'll meet you in Corridor Delta 6. Krell closed the channel. Lily, he said without slowing, you must prepare yourself. We are entering an active suppression zone. There may be armed contractors ahead. She swallowed. I won't scream. Mama says screaming waste time. That is not inaccurate, Krell said. When they reached the intersection, the lights shifted from white to dim amber, signaling movement restrictions. A thick blast door began sliding out from the wall. Krell moved fast. With one powerful stride, he reached the control panel and slammed his palm-mounted override chip against it. Red lights flashed. The door halted, then jerked back into its frame. Access granted. Dravik priority code. Lily exhaled shakily. That would have cut us off. That was its purpose, Krell said. They continued. The corridor widened ahead of them, and a moment later Officer Vex appeared, gesturing urgently. His armor was dusted with debris from the maintenance conduits. Commander, Vex said, the shuttle bay is 3 minutes from full lockdown. Consortium teams are deploying reinforcement units. They're trying to stall until Volmar can seize the child. Then we will not stall, Krell replied. Vex crouched slightly, bringing himself to Lily's level, something Dravik never did with adults. Hold onto my belt strap, he instructed her. Do not release it. If you lose contact, call out immediately. Lily nodded and grabbed tight. Move, Krell said. They ran. Dravik moved in controlled bursts, efficient, silent, momentum-directed. Vex kept his stride tight so Lily could keep up, while Krell took point, monitoring every shadow, every shift of the corridor temperature, every vibration through the soles of his boots. Over the comms, outpost announcements began blaring. Security directive. Unauthorized personnel detected in Deck 7. All departments remain at station. Await instructions from Director Volmar. The irony of Volmar using the word security was not lost on Krell. He signaled a halt with one raised hand. Around the next bend, 3 Valyrian contractors stood guard, armed with pulse rifles set to stun. Not company issue. These were personal weapons, faster firing, less stable, more dangerous in untrained hands. They hadn't seen the Dravik yet. Krell stepped forward, weapon drawn, movement silent and measured. Vex guided Lily behind a supply alcove, shielding her with his body. Krell raised his voice just enough to carry. Valyrian personnel, he called, you are in violation of Coalition security statute. Lay down your weapons and vacate this corridor. The contractors spun. For a moment, fear washed visibly across their features. Dravik at close quarters tended to have that effect. But desperation made beings reckless. One contractor barked. The director ordered us to detain the human kid. Stand down, Krell. You're out of line. I'm acting under Security Protocol 7 Alpha. Krell replied. Stand down. The contractor didn't. He fired. Krell moved faster than Lily had ever seen a living thing move. His arms swept up and across, intercepting the pulse bolt with a shock plate embedded in his armor. The energy hit, dispersed across the conductive ribs, and fizzled harmlessly. The second contractor tried to adjust aim. Krell fired first. A blue stun pulse shot across the corridor, slamming the contractor into the wall with a hard thud. He dropped instantly. The third hesitated, long enough for Vex to step out and land a precise strike with the butt of his weapon. The contractor collapsed. The first, emboldened by panic, was raising his rifle again when Krell closed the distance in a blur. He seized the rifle barrel with one clawed hand, twisted, and snapped the locking mechanism. The weapon fell apart like a toy. With his other hand, Krell struck a controlled, non-lethal blow to the sternum. The contractor crumpled. Silence fell again, thick and humming. Lily peeked around Vex's arm, her heart pounding. She'd seen Dravik before, but never in motion like that. Never with purpose. You didn't kill them, she said softly. Unnecessary, Krell replied. They are misguided, not hostile combatants. That Lily understood in the way only a child could. Dravik weren't heartless. They were precise. Move, Krell ordered, and they continued running. When they reached the shuttle bay access corridor, the overhead lights strobed red. A heavy lockdown barrier was lowering. Krell! Vex shouted. We won't make it under that. Krell sprinted. Vex scooped Lily into his arms and bolted after him, covering distance with huge, bounding steps. The barrier descended. Krell threw himself forward, extended one arm, and jammed his forearm under the barrier's edge. The metal slammed down onto his armor, sparks flying. Lily screamed once, but Vex muffled the sound with his shoulder as he dove beneath the narrowing gap, rolling to protect her. Krell strained. Dravik muscles rippled under his armor, bones locking into reinforced stabilizers. The barrier slowed, shuddered, stopped. Krell lifted it just enough. Through, he commanded. Vex slid Lily across the floor under the opening, then dove after her. Krell followed in a fluid drop, retracting his arm just as the barrier slammed shut behind him. They were through. Ahead lay the shuttle bay, a large, echoing chamber with a triangular craft warming on its landing struts. Engine lights glowed bright blue. The ramp was down. The side hatch flashed green, ready. 2 Dravik officers stood guard, loyal to Krell's command structure, not the consortium. That mattered, now more than ever. Commander, one guard reported, Dr. Barrett has boarded. Medical says she's stable. Good, Krell said. But before he could continue, a sharp clang echoed through the bay. The opposite doors opened. Director Volmar strode in, flanked by 6 armed contractors. The air in the bay tightened. Krell, Volmar shouted, voice echoing through the chamber. Stand down. You're acting outside your authority. You will surrender the humans and the data crystal immediately. Krell stepped forward, positioning himself between the shuttle and Volmar. You have violated multiple coalition statutes, Krell said. You attempted to remove a protected witness, obstruct a 7 Alpha investigation, and seize restricted data. Cease your interference. Volmar's fur bristled with fury. You fool. Do you think the coalition will protect you when they learn you let a human manipulate you? You're risking your whole command on a terrified child and her delusional mother. Lily, pressed against Vex's side, trembled. Krell's answer came steady and cold. I'm not acting on emotion, he said. I'm acting on protocol. You have forgotten the difference. Volmar snarled. Contractors. Fire if necessary. Pulse rifles lifted. Vex tensed. Lily squeezed her stuffed animal so tightly it seemed strained. Krell didn't flinch. He raised his own weapon, set the power to stun, and spoke one final warning. Volmar, he said, do not test me. Volmar gave the order. Fire. The bay exploded into motion. Contractors fired. Blue energy bolts streaked toward Krell. He moved like a creature carved from momentum. Armor plates deflecting shots, boots gripping the deck. He returned fire with precision. One contractor down, then another. Vex fired from cover. The guards by the shuttle joined in. The air buzzed with stun pulses, sparks, ricochets. Krell lunged forward and seized one rifle barrel, snapping it clean. The contractor tried to swing a punch. Krell caught his wrist, twisted, and dropped him with a controlled strike. Another bolt ripped past and grazed Krell's shoulder armor, blowing off a chunk of plating. He didn't stop. "Vex!" Krell shouted. Board the shuttle. Vex grabbed Lily, sprinted, and bounded up the ramp. Eliza met them at the entrance, pulling Lily into her arms. "Krell!" Vex called from the hatch. "We're ready." Krell turned, sprinted toward the ramp, and Foreman Drex lunged from the side, slamming an emergency override baton into the shuttle's outer controls. The bay doors above the shuttle groaned. They were closing. "No!" Eliza gasped. "We'll be trapped." Krell's comm blared with station alerts. "Atmospheric seal breach," the automated voice said. "Decompression imminent." Drex grinned savagely, fur bristling. "Too late, Commander. You won't make it now." Krell didn't waste breath arguing. He sprinted. The bay doors shuddered, sparks flying as the locks engaged. The outpost lights flickered under the strain. Krell surged forward and slammed his palm onto the emergency decompression panel. Red warning lights flared. "Emergency override accepted," the system announced. "Decompression in 15 seconds. Volmar's eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare." Krell stared straight at him. "Protocol 7 Alpha authorizes any necessary measure to ensure evacuation of restricted material." The countdown began. 15, 14, 13. "Krell, get on!" Vex shouted. Krell backed toward the shuttle, firing stun bolts rhythmically, keeping contractors pinned. 12, 11, 10. The pressure in the bay started to dip, hissing air, vibrating deck plates. 9, 8, 7. The remaining contractors abandoned their assault and scrambled for pressure suits. 6, 5. Krell leapt. His boots hit the ramp. 4. Vex slammed the hatch. 3. Launch, Krell ordered. 2. The shuttle engines roared. 1. Decompression detonated like a thunderclap. Air exploded outward. Debris flew. The bay doors wrenched open just enough. The shuttle shot through the gap, scraping metal, alarms shrieking, and burst into the blackness of space. Inside the shuttle, Lily clung to her mother, shaking but alive. Eliza looked up at Krell, breath catching. "You came," she whispered. Krell braced himself against the bulkhead, checked the shuttle's shields, and finally answered. "It was required," he said. But Lily, still trembling, smiled through her tears. "No," she whispered. "It was you." Space swallowed the shuttle. One heartbeat, they were inside Centauri 7's battered docking bay, air tearing itself apart under emergency decompression. The next, there was only blackness and the hard, white glare of distant stars. The station shrank behind them, a jagged knot of metal clinging to the scarred moon. Inside the shuttle, everything was noise and breathing and the hum of overworked systems. Shields holding, Officer Vex reported from the pilot's seat, claws flying over controls. Hull integrity at 83%. Engines at 92 and stabilizing. Behind him, the compartment looked too small for the amount of relief packed into it. Eliza Barrett sat strapped into one of the side seats, Lily clinging to her like a second harness. Lily's face was streaked with tears and engine light. Her stuffed animal sat squashed between them, its fur singed where a stray spark had grazed it during the launch. Krell braced himself near the hatch, one hand gripping an overhead rail as the shuttle corrected its trajectory. His armor bore fresh scorch marks and a jagged crack along one shoulder plate where the barrier had smashed down. He ignored it. "Distance to Centauri 7?" he asked. 2,000 kilometers and increasing, Vex replied. "Station weapons are offline. No pursuit vessels launched yet. Volmar won't let us go without trying something," Eliza rasped, voice rough from earlier interrogation. "He's not the type to accept losing quietly." Krell moved toward the forward console, the deck subtly tilting under his feet as the shuttle aligned with its preset course. "Our immediate priority," he said, is to clear the system's inner defense net and transmit full data to coalition security. Until then, Volmar may attempt intervention through political channels or remote interdiction. Lily lifted her head from her mother's shoulder. "What's interdiction?" she asked. "An attempt to stop us," Krell said simply. She swallowed. "Will it work?" "Not if we move efficiently," Krell replied. "And not if Officer Vex flies as well as he shoots." From the pilot's seat, Vex made a noise that, on any other species, would have been called a snort. "I will consider that an expression of confidence, Commander." Eliza managed a faint smile, then winced as the motion pulled at a bruise. "What now?" she asked. "I gave him my data. You got us off the station, somehow. What happens next?" "The shuttle will reach the system boundary in approximately 11 hours, Krell explained. "At that point, we rendezvous with Outpost Gamma 3, a coalition security hub. I have already marked our transmission packet as 7 Alpha priority." He tapped a control on his wrist, bringing up a small hollow display projected in the air between them. Lines of code and authorization glyphs scrolled past. Dravik clearances, coalition seals, emergency flags. "By now," he continued, "every listening post along this sector's relay chain knows that Centauri 7 may contain prohibited technology. Volmar cannot silence that signal." "Good," Eliza said. Then her gaze sharpened. "And you?" Krell's head tilted, the ridges on his skull catching the overhead lights. "Clarify. You defied your client," she said. "Fired on contractors. Forced a decompression. Took me and my daughter off station without their authorization. They're going to call it mutiny, treason, whatever sounds most dramatic in the complaint." "Accurate," Krell said. "They will call it many things." "And your own people?" Eliza pressed. "Dravik High Command doesn't like loose cannons. Dravik security doctrine prioritizes adherence to highest-level protocols," Krell replied. 7 Alpha is among the highest. I will face review, yes. Perhaps reassignment. But my report will show that I acted within coalition law. He didn't add the unspoken thought. The law didn't always protect those who followed it when power and profit felt threatened. Lily looked between them, trying to track the grown-up's words. "Are they going to be mad at you?" she asked Krell quietly. He considered for a moment. Human children did not understand the gradients of reprimand and political fallout. They understood simple things, mad or not mad, safe or unsafe. "Some will be displeased," he said. "Others will approve. What matters is whether they acknowledge that the protocols were followed. And if they don't," Lily pressed, Krell's compound eyes fixed on her. "Then," he said, "I will still know that I did what was necessary when you ran to the checkpoint." Lily's fingers tightened in the fur of her stuffed animal. That seemed to be enough. Behind them, the comms console beeped. "Incoming station transmission," Vex announced. "Source, Centauri 7. Encryption, company standard, forced push. They're trying to override our filters." "Block it," Krell said immediately. "We do not accept external commands during priority evacuation." Vex nodded, claws tapping. "Blocking direct control. But we can't stop them from sending audio." A second later, Volmar's voice spilled into the cockpit, hard and sharp, even through static. "Oh, you have overstepped every possible boundary. By the authority of the Valyrian Mining Consortium, I am filing formal charges of insubordination, sabotage, unauthorized decompression, and theft of company property. Your contract is terminated, effective immediately. Dravik High Command will be notified that you acted without corporate approval." Krell reached over and lowered the volume. "Continue recording," he told Vex. "The Security Council will find this educational." Volmar's rant continued in the background like distant thunder. "Access to that data crystal belongs to the Consortium. Any attempt to invoke Kithran statutes is baseless and reckless fearmongering. The Coalition will see through." Krell muted the feed entirely. Eliza exhaled. "He sounds rattled." "Volmar is confident when operating in shadows," Krell said. "Less so when his actions are logged on secure channels." He moved to the auxiliary console and inserted his personal encrypted module, the one carrying a copy of Eliza's data. The interface recognized his authorization and opened a secure channel to the nearest Coalition relay. Priority 7 Alpha transmission, the shuttle's system announced. Recipient, Coalition Security Council. Contents, restricted data packet, authentication by Commander Krell, Dravik Security. Krell dictated the accompanying report with crisp, precise phrasing, summarizing the discovery in Sector 12, Drex's unauthorized interrogation, Volmar's interference, and the emergency evacuation. He spoke of isotopic profiles and containment risk, of statutes and obligations. He did not speak of Lily's tears, or Eliza's broken lip, or the way a child's hand had clung to his armor. Those details lived outside official reports. Transmission away, the shuttle announced a moment later. Time to relay confirmation, 17 minutes. They were committed now. No way back. The next hour passed in a strange, stretched-out quiet. Vex adjusted their course periodically, riding efficient acceleration curves. Eliza dozed and jerked awake in fits, her body fighting between exhaustion and adrenaline. Lily sat in her lap, watching the stars drift across the small viewport, her thumb absently rubbing the frayed edge of her toy's ear. Krell remained by the console, seemingly still. But inside, his mind moved like a machine in overdrive, cycling through possibilities. High Command could recall him. The Consortium could leverage back-channel influence. Coalition Security could decide this was all overblown and quietly bury it. Well, they could take it seriously. Commander, Lily's voice broke his internal loop. He turned his head. She had twisted in her seat to face him, her legs tucked under her, straps snug across her chest like a nest of webbing. Yes, he said. Can I ask you something? She said. You may. When I came to the checkpoint, she said slowly, choosing her words, you could have told me to go away. Or said it wasn't your problem. Why didn't you? The other guards, they looked like they'd say no. Krell thought about his fellow officers. Many of them were perfectly competent. Most would have done exactly what Lily described. Directed her to administrative dispute channels, filed a minor incident log at most, and moved on. It would have been the practical choice. I heard certain words, Krell said at last. Company secrets, coalition embassy, beating. Combined with your level of distress, they indicated potential high-priority violations. That triggered protocol review. Lily frowned. So, it wasn't because you felt bad for me. Dravik training does not emphasize emotional motivation, Krell said. We act according to standards. Oh, Lily said, deflating a little. He watched her reaction. Then he added, slowly, but your courage in seeking help from those you feared was noteworthy, even by Dravik standards. Lily's eyes flicked up, hope starting to glow again. Really, Krell said. Most adults hesitate to confront authority when frightened. You did not. Her shoulders straightened a bit. So, I did something brave. Yes, he said. You did something brave. Human emotions were messy, but some outcomes were simple. The shuttle's speakers chimed. Incoming relay, the system said. Source, Coalition Security. Priority, 7 Alpha acknowledgement. Vex tapped the console. A calm, modulated voice filled the cabin. It belonged to no one they recognized. Security Council receipt confirmed, it said. Data packet integrity at 99.8%. Provisional containment order issued for Centauri 7 and associated corporate operations. Coalition investigative vessel en route to outpost Gamma 3. Expected intercept in 9 hours. Commander Krell, maintain current heading and secure all witnesses. Council review pending. Provisional commendation. Adherence to protocol recognized. End of message. Eliza exhaled, a real breath this time, not the shallow reflex she'd been stuck in. They heard us, she whispered. They heard the evidence, Krell corrected gently. That is what matters. And they commended you, Vex noted. Provisional, but still. Krell ignored that. Commendations were external noise. The important thing was that the Kithran protocols were engaged. Volmar's room to maneuver had just shrunk. Hours blurred. At some point, Eliza slept for real, her head falling sideways, Lily's weight warm against her. Vex set the autopilot and cycled through diagnostics. Krell remained awake, Dravik metabolism needing less rest, his mind still ticking through possible contingencies. Several times, faint pings brushed their sensors, passive scans from the general relay network. No hostile vessels, no consortium interceptors. Either Volmar didn't have ships fast enough to catch them, or he was gambling on legal battles instead of open conflict. Probably both. 2 hours before they reached the designated rendezvous point, the shuttle's systems lit up with new contacts. Multiple mass signatures ahead, Vex said, voice sharpening. Identifying. Coalition Patrol Cruiser, Class Median. 2 escort cutters. No Valyrian signals. Good, Krell said. Open a channel. The main display flickered on. A symbol appeared first. The interlocking rings of the Galactic Coalition, overlaid with the angular glyph representing security. Then the image resolved. A tall, translucent-skinned being with a crest of living tendrils looked out from the screen, dressed in dark uniform with a silver stripe. Medusan, if Krell's xenology training was right. Their gaze was steady and unreadable. Shuttle, they said, voice layered as if multiple tones spoke at once. This is Investigator Thran, Coalition Security. You are broadcasting a 7 Alpha priority signal. Confirm your cargo. Krell stepped into view. Commander Krell of Dravik Security, he said. Aboard, Dr. Eliza Barrett, human geologist. Lily Barrett, human juvenile. Officer Vex, Dravik, restricted data module containing Kithrin-linked isotopic analysis from Centauri 7. All under active security protection. Thran's dark eyes flicked to Eliza and Lily in the background, then back to Krell. Your initial report was thorough, they said. We are diverting you from Gamma 3 to our cruiser for immediate debrief. Do you accept Coalition authority in this matter? I do, Krell said without hesitation. Coalition statutes override local contracts under 7 Alpha. Correct, Thran said. There was the faintest hint of approval in their tone. Prepare for docking. Security corridor will be extended. Weapons will be peace-locked per protocol. Understood, Vex said. The transmission ended. Lily tugged at her mother's sleeve. Are they the good guys? She whispered. Eliza looked at Krell. They're the ones who wrote the rules I followed, he said. We will see if they live by them. A few minutes later, the cruiser's docking arm extended, a massive structure unfolding like a metal limb, latching onto the shuttle with gentle, irresistible force. The interior airlock cycled. Pressure equalized. The hatch slid open. The corridor beyond was well-lit, clean, lined with recessed panels, and marked in 3 languages with hazard symbols and security seals. 2 Coalition guards waited. 1 human, 1 insectoid species Lily didn't know, both in dark uniforms with yellow security bands. Behind them stood Thran. Up close, the Medusan's translucent skin revealed a faint flicker of internal light where organs pulsed gently. Their tendrils shifted in slow, thoughtful waves. Commander Krell, Thran said. Dr. Barrett, Lily Barrett. They inclined their heads slightly, to each in turn. Welcome aboard the CSV Halcyon Verge. Eliza released her harness and stood, wobbling briefly. Lily held her hand tight. You received the full packet? Eliza asked, unable to keep the tension from her voice. The scans, the isotopes, the everything? We did, Thran said. Our preliminary analysis supports your concerns. Full verification is ongoing. In the meantime, Centauri 7 has been placed under provisional quarantine. No ships in or out without security oversight. Lily's brows knit. Does that mean the bad men can't hurt anyone else? She asked. Thran's tendrils stilled for a moment, then resumed their slow sway. For now, they said, the bad men are confined to paperwork and interrogation rooms. It is not as dramatic, but it is often more effective. Lily seemed to consider this. Good, she said. Thran's gaze settled on Krell. You are aware, they said, that the consortium has sent 3 separate complaints about you in the last 12 hours. Krell had expected as much. I assumed as much when Volmar began shouting, he said. Do you consider their complaints valid? Thran's mouth curved in something that might have been a smile on their species. The Council appreciates officers who follow protocols when it is inconvenient, they said. Your actions appear consistent with 7 Alpha. including your decision to evacuate the primary witness and her child despite contract pressure. So, he's not in trouble? Lily asked quickly. Thran looked down at her. Everyone in this room is in trouble, they said mildly. The question is, with whom? They turned back to Krell. Dravik High Command has been notified. Their initial response includes a commendation for your comprehensive interpretation of duty. Full disposition will follow formal inquiry. Krell inclined his head. Acknowledged. Eliza blinked. Commendation, she repeated. After all that, they value adherence to protocol, Thran said. And evidence suggests your actions prevented the clandestine exploitation of banned technology. That carries weight. Lily grinned. I told you he was good, she whispered to her mother. Thran's tendrils rippled in something like amusement. There will be time for detailed debriefing, they said. For now, Dr. Barrett and Lily will be escorted to secure guest quarters for medical evaluation and rest. Commander Krell and Officer Vex will report to the primary briefing chamber for joint review. Eliza reached out impulsively, touching Krell's forearm lightly, far less than the earlier desperate grip, but still bold by Dravik standards. Thank you, she said, for listening, for believing me, for getting Lily out. We wouldn't be here without you. Correct, Krell said simply. You would be dead, and the data crystal destroyed. It wasn't a comforting thing to say. It was just true. But somehow, Eliza's grip on his arm tightened in gratitude rather than flinching away. You could have looked the other way, she said. Most people would have. That matters. Krell didn't answer verbally. He gave a short, precise nod, Dravik equivalent of acknowledging something too complex to dissect in public. Lily stepped forward and hugged his leg again, armor and all. I'm going to tell everyone you're the bravest guard in space, she whispered, even if you say it's just rules. Then she let go, took her mother's hand, and followed the human guard down the corridor. Krell watched them go until the door sealed behind them. Thran waited, then gestured toward the opposite direction. Briefing chamber, they said. We have much to discuss. The Kithran statutes have not been invoked in decades. Your case will set precedents. Precedents can be useful, Krell said. They clarify where lines truly are. Or they reveal where lines were illusions, Thran replied. Either way, the galaxy will adjust. As Krell fell into step beside the investigator, his mind cataloged what lay ahead. Interrogations, reports, political maneuvering, perhaps reassignment. But somewhere behind him, in a secure guest cabin, a human child was telling her mother how alien guards had listened when she was scared. And somewhere far away, on a scarred moon orbited by a now-quarantined station, centuries-old technology waited in the dark, no longer entirely forgotten. For a species built on strict obedience, Krell reflected, the most radical act was sometimes remembering what the rules were for in the first place. Not to protect contracts, to protect people. Even small, stubborn human ones 10 standard years after a frightened human child ran to an alien checkpoint and rewrote one officer's definition of duty, a chime sounded through a very different corridor. Simulation Omega-12 concluded. The overhead system announced. All cadets report performance scores to the front display. Instructor review in progress. Row by row, cadets began to breathe again. The training amphitheater at the Coalition Security Academy was shaped like a half-ring, consoles on each tier, holographic projectors painting shifting sectors of space in the air. The scent of metal, ozone, and too strong coffee hung over everything. 12 species filled the seats, feathered, furred, scaled, bioluminescent. Their uniforms were the same dark gray, with colored bands at the shoulders, but the way each wore, it was uniquely their own. Near the center of the human cluster sat a young woman with tightly braided black hair, sharp brown eyes, and a posture that hovered between rigid and coiled. Her name, Tag Red Barrett L. Her heart still beat faster than she liked to admit. On the holographic display at the front of the room, the last frame of their simulation hovered, a blurry mining outpost corridor, an alien juvenile in distress, and a cluster of armored security personnel looking confused. Cadets, came a voice from the lower level, deep and resonant, carrying easily without amplification. Your responses have been logged. Every head turned. Commander Krell stepped into view from the instructor's platform. Even in a room full of diverse life forms, he drew attention. Dravik simply did that. His scales had dulled slightly with age, shifting from deep cobalt to a more weathered steel blue. But his posture remained perfectly balanced, his movements precise. The bony ridges from brow to spine gleamed with careful polish. His uniform bore the insignia of an academy instructor and the discreet silver bar of someone who'd been through more real emergencies than simulations. He tapped a control at the podium. The image froze, then split into three, each panel showing a different cadet's decision tree from the exercise. You were given the following scenario, Krell said. A juvenile from a non-dominant species approaches your checkpoint, reporting that a parent is being harmed by local officials. Your posted orders discourage interference in domestic matters that do not directly threaten station operations. Most of you chose one of two options. He gestured. One panel showed a cadet forwarding the juvenile to administrative channels, filing a routine incident log, and returning to checkpoint duty. Another panel displayed a cadet calling in a human counselor to take the child away, then marking the situation non-security. These are common, Krell said. They are safe for your own records. They avoid escalations. They allow you to say later, I followed orders. His eyes, multifaceted, unreadable, swept the room. But they may fail the core mandate of security. He tapped the third panel. It expanded, showing a human cadet's sequence. This one had knelt to the juvenile's level, gathered full details, weighed the risk of an action, and then personally initiated a limited investigation with a small detachment while assigning another officer to watch the checkpoint. Cadet Barrett, Krell said, stand. Lily rose, feeling a dozen glances land on her. Her uniform felt suddenly too tight across the shoulders. Explain your reasoning, Krell said. There was no softness in his tone for her. Not here. Not now. She drew a breath. Sir, she said, the juvenile in the sim was terrified but coherent. They used specific words, company secrets, beating, no witnesses that, taken together, suggested something more than a family argument. They indicated a possible attempt to conceal wrongdoing. I judged that our primary obligation, to prevent harm and uphold coalition statutes, outweighed the directive to avoid domestic disputes. Some of the other cadets shifted in their seats. This was the kind of answer that could get a real officer in trouble in the field, depending on whose toes got stepped on. Which regulation supports this? Krell asked. Coalition Security Foundational Principle 3, she replied. Protection of life and prevention of harm supersede lower priority directives. Sir. Silence held for a moment. Then Krell inclined his head. Correct, he said. Protocols exist to implement core principles, not replace them. If slavish obedience to a lower directive allows a preventable death, you have not fulfilled your duty, no matter how neat your paperwork. He let that sit there, the words heavy and very slightly subversive. In the field, he went on, you will be pressured to treat certain sentience as less urgent because of species, status, or contract. You will be told their problems are not your concern. Remember this scenario when that happens. Remember that sometimes the smallest voice in the corridor carries the loudest truth. His gaze tracked across the amphitheater and, just for a heartbeat, rested on Lily. If there was any personal recognition in it, only she could see it. Dismissed, he said. Chair scraped. Conversations began in low tones. Species scent and anxiety rose like heat. Lily powered down her console. Her seat neighbor, a stocky Valyrian cadet with tawny fur and two honest eyes, leaned over. You know you just made half the class feel like cowards, right? He muttered. She huffed a laugh. If an exercise makes them feel that way, she said, better now than when it gets someone actually hurt. He pulled a face that was half grimace, half grin. Your mom really is that Dr. Barrett, isn't she? The Kithrin case won. Security legends talk about that incident like it was a hollow drama. My mother calls it a long week, Lily said. And she says hollow dramas always miss the parts where the air smells like blood and disinfectant. He sobered at that. You heading to mess? He asked. In a bit, she said. I need to talk to the commander. He gave a low whistle. Rather you than me. She rolled her eyes at him and began descending the steps toward the podium, weaving through cadets filing out. She could feel the eyes of a few instructors on her back, curious but not intervening. It wasn't unusual for a top-performing cadet to seek feedback, after all. Krell remained at the console, transferring the exercise results to his personal slate, logging notes. He didn't look up as she approached, but Lily had learned that meant nothing. Dravik saw more than they ever let on. Commander, she said, coming to a stop at the boundary between student space and instructor space. Request permission to speak. Granted, he said, still tapping. She waited until the last cluster of cadets left the hall and the door sealed, reducing the ambient noise to a low hum. What is it, Cadet Barrett? Krell asked, finally raising his head. In his compound gaze, she could almost see the large and small moments of her life reflected. A terrified 8-year-old hugging his leg on a shuttle bay floor. A teenager studying security statutes under her mother's watchful eye. A fresh cadet arriving at the academy with 2 high scores and 2 heavy expectations. I wanted to ask, she said, why you chose that particular scenario? With the kid, the non-dominant species. The orders to stay out of it. It's very specific. The circumstances are efficient for teaching conflicting protocols, Krell said. It forces cadets to reconcile written orders with real-time ethical assessment. Sure, she said, but of all possible conflicts. Her words trailed off, leaving the rest unspoken. You chose something that looks a lot like what happened on Centauri 7. Krell's head tilted, ridges catching the light. For Dravik, it was almost a wry expression. Personal experience informs effective instruction, he said. 10 standard years ago, a juvenile approached a checkpoint on a remote outpost with a report that most officers would have dismissed. I have seen how such moments propagate outward. Lily shook her head slightly. I still think most officers would have told her to file a complaint and go away. Possible, Krell said, but not relevant. What matters is that at least one did not. He turned off the main display. The holographic corridor dissolved into empty air. You disagreed with my answer, Lily said abruptly. Krell regarded her. I called it correct. In class, she said. But you think I left something out. A faint rumble deep in his chest might have been Dravik amusement. You cited Principle 3, he said. Accurate. You weighed risk. Efficient. However, you did not mention the factor that gave you context others lacked. She frowned. My personal history. Your mother's case, he corrected. You have seen what happens when officials decide someone is overreacting or not worth the trouble. You know what losing a parent in a corridor like that would do. Sir, she said, we're not supposed to base security decisions on personal feelings. Krell made a soft clacking sound with his mandibles, the Dravik version of sigh. Emotional compromise is a risk, he said, but experience is not. You have walked through a certain kind of fire already. It has burned away some naivete. That can make you harder, or it can make you more precise. Which it does is a matter of discipline. She studied him. What do you think it's done to you? He paused at that. Dravik did not often reflect on themselves aloud. Introspection was usually reserved for private reports, not conversations with cadets, especially not human ones with 2 perceptive eyes. When I was first posted to Centauri 7, he said slowly, my understanding of duty was narrow. I viewed protocols as walls. Stay within them, and you are safe. The incident with your mother and with you showed they are also bridges. They connect local actions to larger principles. He looked at her directly. Your presence at that checkpoint forced me to choose which side of that structure I stood on. I have not forgotten that. Lily swallowed. Neither have I. Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just full. Her comm band vibrated softly. Mess hall reminder. She ignored it. Is it true, she asked, that High Command almost reassigned you to some backwater after Centauri 7? Mom says there were discussions. Your mother has access to too many channels, Krell said dryly. There were debates. Some considered my choices inconvenient. Others valued the precedent they set. The Security Council's intervention shifted the calculus. So they made you a teacher, she said. Instruction is not punishment, cadet, he replied. Influencing how future officers interpret protocols may have more lasting impact than any single incident. And you get to haunt us with impossible simulations, she said. That is a secondary benefit, he admitted. The faintest smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Commander, she said softly, when I was 8, and you took us off that station, I thought you were a monster. His ridges lifted. Clarify. She shrugged. Big, armored. As I couldn't read. I was sure you were going to send me away or yell at me for grabbing your uniform. But you listened, and you kept listening even when it got dangerous. That's why I'm here. Why I chose security instead of science like my mom. Science discovers problems, he said. Security solves them. You told me this once. I stole it from her, Lily said. But yeah. He made that deep rumbling sound again, quieter this time. You should know, he said, that your mother's work on Kitharin containment informs half the new training modules. She is, as humans say, annoyingly indispensable. I'll pass that along, Lily said. She'll be thrilled to hear Dravik find her annoying. Krell's gaze shifted toward the closed doors, as if seeing beyond them. There is something else you should understand, he said. The incident at Centauri 7 did not only change how humans are treated in certain contracts. It altered Dravik doctrine. There is now explicit language in our manuals about weighing pleas from non-dominant juveniles. Before, such guidance was minimal. She blinked. You mean, there's a Lily clause in Dravik's security policy? It is not called that, he said. But in effect, yes. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. Humans cried easily. She hated that. She blinked the moisture away. Good, she managed. He watched her a moment longer. You are not responsible for fixing the entire galaxy, he said. Do not let any instructor, human or otherwise, imply that you must be. Feels like I owe it something, though, she said quietly. After everything, the galaxy owes itself better choices, Krell countered. Your obligation is simpler. When someone runs to you afraid, do not look away without thinking. She nodded slowly. I can do that. I know, he said. Her comm buzzed again, more insistent this time. I should go before the mess line becomes a war zone, she said. See that it does not, Krell replied. We lack the budget for another food fight incident. She grinned. No promises, sir. She turned to leave, then hesitated. Commander, she said, glancing back. Yes. When I was little, I told you your eyes looked different from the other Dravik. It made 0 sense biologically, but I still see it. He regarded her, waiting. You look at people like they're data points that matter, she said. Not just numbers in a report. I think that's why I ran to you, not anyone else. Maybe that's why I still keep ending up in your classes, even when the course scheduler says I could branch out. Cadets do not choose their instructors, Krell pointed out. Maybe not on paper, she said. But some things feel inevitable. Something shifted very subtly in his posture. Then consider this inevitable as well, he said. You will be an excellent security officer. Not because you are human, because you are willing to question where protocols are pointing you. She straightened unconsciously at that. Thank you, sir, she said. She left then, boots thudding lightly on the steps, the door hissing shut behind her. Her footsteps faded down the corridor, then blended into the academy's larger heartbeat. Drills, lectures, debates, the clatter and hum of hundreds of beings learning how to stand between harm and the vulnerable. Krell remained in the empty amphitheater for a while longer. He powered down the consoles, one by one, until only the faint glow of the status lights remained. Then he sat on the edge of the instructor's platform and opened a personal log. Not the official report kind, but the private reflection channel Dravik were encouraged but not required to keep. Log entry, he said. Subject, training cohort 4-1, exercise Omega 12. He paused, then continued. Cadets displayed predictable attachment to written directives. Notable exception, Cadet Barrett. Correctly identified underlying principal conflict and chose higher order mandate. Emotional context, present, but did not override rational assessment. Conclusion. Prior lived experience of being the juvenile in the corridor can be leveraged as strength rather than liability when handled with discipline. Another pause. Personal note, he added after a moment's hesitation. 10 years ago, one human child insisted my eyes were different. Today, that same human insists on seeing possibilities where others see lines. I find this unexpectedly stabilizing. End log. He closed the channel. Outside, beyond the Academy's defensive grid, stars burned and turned, indifferent and constant. Somewhere out there, Centauri 7's abandoned shafts had been sealed, its Kithrin relics buried under layers of containment fields and warning buoys. The Valyrian Mining Consortium had been fined, restructured, supervised. In the halls of the Coalition, committees still argued about risk assessments and profit margins. Old habits died hard, but on a level that did not show up in budget reports, something had shifted. A Dravic commander had once decided that a child's fear was not beneath his notice. A scientist had chosen to risk her life rather than let dangerous knowledge be buried. A frightened little girl had run to the biggest, scariest guards she could see and refused to be turned away. Now, new officers were being trained on that precedent. Protocols had not weakened. They had deepened. Sometimes Krell thought the galaxy didn't change because a fleet fired, or a planet voted, or a treaty was signed. Sometimes it changed because someone very small and very scared refused to accept that "this isn't our problem" was the final answer. Humans had a word they liked to use for that stubborn, against-the-odds refusal: hope. Dravic had never bothered naming it. He suspected they would, eventually. And if some future cadet somewhere looked back at these days and decided to act when a different officer would have turned away, that would be enough. Krell rose, keyed off the last set of lights, and left the room in darkness, his steps steady.